Well, thank you all for joining us today. I'm Kourtney Govro, your host for today's Change Your Chat. And joining me today is Jimi Cook, co-founder and board chairman of Be the Change Volunteers. Jimi and his wife, Christy, founded Be the Change Volunteers in 2007 during a supposed one-time school building project in Rwanda. The organization has grown beyond their wildest dreams and, more importantly, has held true to its mission of empowering communities through sustainable, education-focused development and aid. Jimi's BHAG, his big, hairy, audacious goal for BCT or Be the Change Volunteers, is to complete at least 100 projects during his lifetime. In his day job, Jimi serves as the Allen Distinguished Chair in Orthopedic Surgery and director of the Thompson Laboratory for Regenerative Orthopedics and Mizzou Biojoint Center at University of Missouri, which is a mouthful. But I'm so glad to have you here with me today, Jimi. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for doing this, Kourtney. I think, you giving your time and your talents to help raise awareness for Be the Change is awesome. So thank you.
Oh, thanks. This is great. So let's dive right in. So we have two things I want to cover on this call today. Thing number one is learn about Be the Change and how your story really about that. But also I want to talk about your book, which is fantastic. And everybody should go out to Amazon and get Hand Delivered Hope by Jimi Cook. It's easy read. It's written in vignettes. Like every chapter is its own story, its own short story. So you don't have to sit there and read the whole thing in one sitting. You can read these little stories and it's fantastic. It really shares your heart well. So you guys did an excellent job. So tell me a little bit, why did you decide to take the first mission trip working with Habitat for Humanity in Zambia? And what was it about that trip that really changed your life?
Yeah, I wish I had a heroic story to tell you, but the truth is I watched a documentary on Jimmy Carter and his work with Habitat for Humanity. And the now, I guess, somewhat famous quote that I told Christy after watching that is, this is really cool. Like, I love their principles. And, the greatest thing is for you and I, Christy, this will be an altruistic way to see the world. So we both had traveling in our heart and, to kind of make it a good thing, to be honest with you, that really is what stimulated it. And then I say, we went and we met those people and we saw, I do want to give a lot of credit to Habitat because we do share a lot of those principles. I think sweat equity, I think, it's a help up, not a handout. So this is empowerment. This is not dependency. And community engagement and involvement. And then just the people, I say, that's where I really learned about true joy. I learned about resilience beyond my wildest dreams. And despite my 26 years of formal education, that's where I got the best education I ever got. And at the end, I say, in the book, we met these orphans. Orphans from famine, from civil unrest, from malaria, from HIV. And these orphans from 4 years old to 19 years old, when I asked them, what's the best thing I could do for you? And I thought it'd be super easy. I still didn't quite get it at the end of that trip. It was building in us, but I didn't still quite get it until they said, the best thing you can do is help us with our education, books and tuition. Yeah, it's beyond amazing. And so that really launched it. And then I said, we got to do this. I committed to them because I asked the question. So I said, what can I do for you? And if you know me, I'm gonna honor my word. And they gave me some tough words to honor, but that's what Be the Change is all about.
So that really is what triggered it for you. That's what triggered the whole thing, was that conversation with those kids.
It really wasn't. Honestly, every time we think about mission or purpose or struggles, I see those kids. I see their faces and I hear those two words. It was almost a chorus of unanimous. And it wasn't, that's the thing, it was authentic. That's what they want. No one planted that in them. If they planted it in them, they'd say, give me cash or, give me iPod, things I can sell. That was what they saw as their future. And yeah, it really launched something that I never imagined. It took it from an altruistic way to see the world to a passion and a mission that, I'll do till the day I die.
That's amazing. I love that story. When we do a pre-chat that people don't really know about, but we do a pre-chat so that we can get to know each other. And it was leaving that chat, I was like blown away just by, you could feel the energy and passion that you have for those kids and for everything you're doing. And it's a beautiful thing. So talk to me a little bit about being a changer. I love that you call the volunteers changers, that they're not just volunteers, they're changers. They're doing something really impressive. Tell me a little bit about who they are and how they come to work with you.
Yeah, it's been neat that that's happened that way as well too. Because it does give you an identity, and it reinstates, I think, with just a simple word, the purpose every single time. So we're there to change. I mean, the cool thing is too, they're people from all over the world, a lot of different countries now, including ones that we initially visited, and that now they've gotten into the mission. So that's really cool. But every race, religion, ethnicity. But they really have at least one thing in common, and that's to serve, and to, as Nelson Mandela said, to help provide the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world, and that's education. And so they believe in that, and they believe that that's really a human right, and that everything we can do in our power for a quality education, a safe education. I mean, that's sometimes I think as Americans we don't understand, is that it's not just the quality of the education, but I mean, for it to be quality, it has to be safe. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we don't even realize that, like, they're just impediments to a safe education. Mm. And so, then I say that they're willing to give the 3 T's, right? Their times, talents, and treasure. Mm-hmm. And it's a beautiful thing. And I think, the cool thing is it's full circle. So that changer then really, at least after the first time they go, maybe when they get involved, but at least after the first project where they're on the ground, they realize that change is not what they're doing, it's what they're getting. Mm-hmm. And so it changes your life every single time.
Yeah, after our first talk, I wrote down, writing a check is great, and you will change lives, but you're going to change your life when you go. That was one of the things you said. I just thought that was really cool. And I don't think people think about that. It is easy. I had actually strangely reached out to a ministry and was like, hey, I'd like to give you some money. And she's like, I'd really like you to help me with this. And I'm like, oh, am I willing to do that? But you're right, if you're willing to get involved. And so tell me a little bit about what they experience when they're there.
So many things, but I think, it's those things that I hope, at least, and I think the vast majority do, is, that true joy, that resilience, and the hope. It's such a powerful thing. And so to see that in action, I always say they're the first, those people that we think of, they're so remote, right? These are remote. I mean, I always say, poverty in the U.S., I mean, there's real poverty in the U.S., but it's exponentially bigger, more intense in the developing world, especially because of access. And so for us to go and know that, I mean, you kind of know that part going in, and then you get there and say, these people have more joy than I have. They'll be the first to offer me water if I'm thirsty, food if I'm hungry, a hug if I look sad. They'll be the first to say, we can do this, the most optimistic people, and, just so authentic. So I think that just automatically shifts your perspective. And then you say, I think you have more energy to serve. And then you also serve in the right ways, because, you've seen it. You've seen what makes a difference, what they want. Just like me, that first time, books and tuition, what's going to shift the culture, the community for them, and do it. And then the other cool thing is just that you learn so much about the culture, right? Like experience that culture, seeing different dances, different church services, different ways of teaching, different ways of building. It's been fun. One of my elevator speeches is that I've hand mixed cement in 17 different countries. And it's fun to see even just that, because you kind of get an insight into what's their strategy. How are they going to do this? And then how are they going to teach people and make that effective into what they're trying to accomplish for their community? And that's the other cool thing, is that it's so much about the community. I mean, we become so isolated in the U.S. and so self-focused, and it's just the opposite there. And that's a wonderful perspective shift for me, at least, every single time, is just to say, I mean, it's all about community. Mm-hmm. It's all about making the future better for the kids and the community, and everybody pulling together to do that.
One of the things we talked about last time that I found really interesting was you talked about being culturally appropriate in the way we give assistance,
Mhm.
and learning that community sounds like part of that. Tell me a little bit about being culturally appropriate. Maybe even talk a little bit about those floating schools in Cambodia.
Yeah, that's the first time it really smacked us in the face was Cambodia. And you know, a lot of lessons as you read in the book is we learn the hard way. Certainly, that was one of them. Is to always, you know, really proactively be culturally appropriate. So the interesting one about Cambodia, and it does set a good example for it, is the color of the school. I mean, you know, here we kind of say, what sounds good? What's the cheapest paint color? You know, let's just get this done, right? But there, it could change the entire way that the education was delivered and who would come.
Mhm.
So literally, and we found this out, you know, fortunately in enough time and did respond to it appropriately. But if it would have been yellow, one sect of the community based on culture, religion, would not have come to the school because of the color of the outside of the school. If it had been red, another half wouldn't have come. But blue, everybody was okay with. So the school was blue. And you know, just little things like that. And then of course in Cambodia too, we had there was a kid that was hurt and I had to, I mean, it was an emergency situation. It was an open fracture, the kid in very contaminated water. And so I was not obviously thinking about, you know, proper etiquette. I was like, can I get to this kid and help him out? But it just goes to show you like the parents and the uncle and our community leaders there, because I went into the house with my shoes on and got on their bed with my shoes on because that's where the kid was. And it was like, I mean, they no longer cared about his arm or anything else. It was like, this is a major cultural taboo. And fortunately, I say, you know, with our guest there, and then Christy, who always seems to know how to save the situation, my wife, Christy, just, you know, carefully cruised in, slipped off my shoes, and then we could help the kid and everything was all right. But, you know, those are things that can derail the best intentions and the best purpose. And then the other part about that, what they probably honestly even more important is that it's not going to be sustainable unless it's culturally appropriate. If we build American schools, if we invoke American curriculum, it won't be accepted and it won't lead to the right jobs, right? It won't lead to the right training, the right next step for them. And it would be actually derailing the situation rather than empowering it. And so, yeah, some we've learned the hard way. We're getting better at it. But now it's really something we try and be proactive about.
Yeah. In Hand Delivered Hope, there are quite a few times when you and Be the Change had to overcome challenges that seemed insurmountable. The passport story is one of my favorites. But what are some of the key factors in solving dilemmas while in a foreign country? And how much of a role did your faith play in that?
Hmm. The last part first, the faith played a huge role every single time. I say, you know, I've prayed some of the most intense and fervent prayers I've ever prayed in my life on Be the Change trips in those situations. And I think that does help with then what, you know, practically on the ground makes a difference. And that's, you know, stay calm, try to make sure first and foremost, everyone you're with is safe. I mean, that's the first thing is do everything you can to make sure they're safe and feel safe. I mean, sometimes you are safe, but you don't feel safe, and then it really doesn't matter. And so I think that's really important. One, I learned from your brother, and that's a good first question to ask is, how much money will it take to make this problem go away? And again, that's hard for us in the U.S. I mean, that's just, you know, it's not something that we do. We really push back against, but I mean, it's just reality in the developing world. And sometimes it's important to do that. And I think, yeah, you know, just use the resources that are around you. That's another part of it's so important to establish the relationships way ahead of time. I mean, we plan Be the Change projects for 1.5 to 2 years before we're ever taking a team there.
Wow.
And so that helped us as well too, because, you know, then we know, you know, who we can contact, what are the relationships, what are the bailout plans, what's the bailout of the bailout, and then how can we get out of this situation in a safe way.
Yeah, you had, when we talked the first time, you talked a little bit about that verse in Matthew. And it was one of my, I actually used it on my kids this week when I was talking to them. And tell me a little bit about that verse and how that has impacted your work with Be the Change.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So the verse we're talking about is Matthew 25, and it talks about how Jesus is talking about how you can do things for others. And, we talk about the least of these. And I think one thing about that is it's really changed my definition of the least of these, because it goes back to what we talked about first, is that I think maybe least in that situation is least resources and least opportunity. It's certainly not the least joyful, the least resilient, the least strong in heart and all that. So I think that's one thing, is it just has really reframed that for me. The other term I like to use is the beautiful poor. I say I've seen poverty and it's beautiful because of the people, and the hearts that are behind it before. But then I think I never really realized until Be the Change, to be honest with you, is the impact of that, because then the verse says, Jesus says, what you do for them, you've done for me. And to me, that just like changed everything, because I think, sometimes we think about, what we do on this earth is just about this earth. But if we're doing it for that, and he says that what you've done for me, what you've done for them, the least of these, you're doing for me, that means we can do things for Jesus on this earth. And I mean, I think that's pretty cool to be able to do that, to do what we say kingdom work on that, and to have it be impactful at that time, to see the face that you're touching and know that that's heavenly work. I mean, that honestly is super inspiring for me, and it just is super fulfilling for me.
That's fantastic. It is, and it's a universal calling. What I like about that verse is that people that are not of the faith can hear that verse and still be inspired to do the same way that you guys have used the Be the Change phrase as well. So meeting a teenage boy in South Africa named Famoso. Did I say that right?
Famoso, yeah.
Famoso. Changed his life and yours. And if you can, I'd love you to share. I've read the story. It's really great. But could you share that story with us today?
Yeah. It's difficult. We lost him when he was 23. We got him here the first time when he was 16. I met him when he was 15 and a half. And so we were on, I think, our 4th project in South Africa, again, beautiful remote area of the world. And we were working, it's kind of nice too, because it just goes to show you, how this can kind of happen, is we were digging a latrine. And so I think that's a great part of the story, just because it just says like, let's just get in there and do what's needed. That's what was needed. And so we're digging a latrine and just working away with some of the people on the team. And, I just heard this voice and looked up, and the sun was pretty high. So it was almost a little bit of a mirage. And this deep voice coming from this 15-and-a-half-year-old, they said, "What are you doing?" And it was Pomoto. And it was this amazing kid who, the first one in his family to ever get past 2nd grade, was living literally in a mud hut. I mean, I saw his mud hut with his grandma. The reason he was doing that is that was close to the school, so he could walk to the school. And he made it all that way. He was, in about 9th grade at that time. And so he just struck up a conversation with us, and it, kind of the one thing led to another. And the really salient part was, once we got talking a little bit, I said, what's your dream? What do you want to be? And again, this is remote South Africa. Kid lives in a mud hut. And I mean, without blinking, he says, "I want to be a photojournalist." I'm like, what? Wait a minute. How can you even know what that is? And so, the amazing part about it is Christy, my wife, is a really good photographer, and University of Missouri, where I work, is really known for its journalism school. And so, it was just meant to be. I mean, I believe that God put us together. And the short story is, through a lot of, figuring stuff out, he had to make trips to Durban, which is about 5 hours away, a couple of times to get a passport, to get a visa. We got him to the US, the school that we work with locally, put him on a scholarship here. And then he went back with it. I'm not kidding you. He went back with his instant camera, drugstore, made portfolio to interview at the best university in all of South Africa to go to photojournalism, and was accepted. Wow. And the cool part about that story, I think, is that when he went in there, he did an interview with the panelists of photojournalists, these professors at the best school in all of South Africa for photojournalism. And he showed him his portfolio, and they said, what kind of camera do you use? Because they were going to talk tech stuff with them. And it's literally an instant camera. And they said, that's impossible. He said, here it is. This is all I got. And so it just, again, it goes to show you, like, right, if you pursue your dreams with passion, and if you can get that opportunity, just flipping a switch, just giving the opportunity. I didn't take those pictures for him. Be the Change didn't, do his work for him. It's just flipping a switch and giving an opportunity, and then he can take it farther than you can ever imagine. So yeah, he actually went through school there, 3 years of photojournalism school. He went on Be the Change builds with us. So again, the full circle. He went to Malawi with us, and really just changed our lives in so many ways, and changed Be the Change in so many ways, because again, we really saw the end user, if you will, for our modern American terminology. We experienced the end user, and understood how we could do that better, and how we could foster that process, that dream come true for as many kids as we possibly could. Yeah, unfortunately, he died the day before graduation. I was supposed to go there that day. But he still impacts our lives every day, for sure, and still impacts Be the Change every day. And it's been a blessing that we'll never forget, for sure.
Yeah, and you enabled a dream. I think that's a really great way that you said that these kids, some of them don't get to dream like our kids. You don't sit there and say, we don't think about that for them the way we would think about it for our kids. Like, we have little kids, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a whatever. And you don't think about that for these kids in developing nations. And here he had a dream, and Be the Change was able to enable that. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's so true. And such a great point, Kourtney, because it's just, and that's part of, I think that's part of the empowerment, is just showing. The other cool part on that note, that you said so well, is also especially the women's side of that equation. So, girls are so much more oppressed in the developing world, especially with regard to education. And so when they see volunteers on our teams, these women that are doctors and lawyers and teachers and businesswomen, and then they're on the build, and they're shoveling gravel, and they're putting shingles on roofs, and they're building desks. That is a really powerful thing. I said, I grew up with a mama and 3 sisters, and so I'm very in touch with my feminine side. And so the, that part of it, and then again, you see, it's just so the oppression of girls in the developing world really smacks you in the face. And so to see that happen is really cool as well.
That is fantastic. So the book is fantastic. Like I said, it's called Hand Delivered Hope, and it's on Amazon. Easy to get, just like you would order any other book off Amazon. But there's a real feeling of optimism throughout the whole book. And it's obviously you have the ability to see some humor. There are some pretty funny little stories in here. Is there a project where you had a hard time finding the humor? And what's a project that you really had to find the silver lining of?
Yes. Well, I guess somewhat ironically, in 2 ways, because you're doing the interview, but also because the most difficult one for me was one I was not on. The other ironic part is you doing the interview is the one your brother was leading, and that was Kenya. And so because I wasn't there, and it was so difficult, I mean, that was the most difficult, scary, truly scary project, and Grant tells that story in the book, and I just provide color commentary in that chapter. And, we both had a hard time, to be honest with you, writing and editing and even including that one in there, because it is a full disclosure, open wounds, vignette story of a lot of things we did wrong. And I just felt so responsible, but then I couldn't do anything except for encourage him and say, like, anything I can do from here, I will. Your brother, and a lot of Be the Change people know your brother, Grant, very well. And so it's no surprise that he, navigated it extremely well, got everybody out of danger and redeemed it. I mean, I hope someday he'll understand. I do now. I hope someday he'll understand that that still was a critical and very positive result in there, because we wouldn't have learned a lot of things we learned as quickly or as well. Everybody was safe. Amazingly, many of those people still are involved with Be the Change. including most importantly your brother. So yeah, but it was, I was on pins and needles the whole time. And I would just say to everybody, you know, read the book, read that chapter, because it's an adventure. I mean, it's as exciting as any movie you'll go pay $20 for, that's for sure. And it does come out okay. So we're still doing what we do. And then the other one, you mentioned the passport story. I think, you know, at the time, that was another one where I was supposed to go, but I couldn't go. And so I had a passport issue. And the cool part about that one is, again, I believe in miracles, and that was a true miracle. I mean, if you read the book, you'll understand that I didn't have enough visa pages in my passport. My passport was legal, everything was fine, but I didn't have enough totally blank visa pages. And I sent these high school kids ahead of me. You know, Christy was there and my sister was there, but at the same time, I was responsible for them. And I was here back in the States in Washington, D.C., with really no way to do what I promised their parents I would do, which was to take care of their kids on that trip. And the crazy, amazing part about that story is the only day of the year, that's National Passport Day, the only Saturday that you can ever get a passport done was that next Saturday. If you don't think that's a miracle, you're crazy. And so I got my passport. I caught up with them one day later. I didn't miss any part of the build, and everybody was safe, and we did well. And that's where we met Pomoto. So, you know, back to that, I think, again, an amazing redemption of a very frustrating and difficult to find silver lining part, until you saw the end result. And that was the best silver lining you can ever imagine.
Yeah. Well, and just how perfectly it played out. I mean, the thing about both of those stories, it's a drive to humility and understanding your role in a bigger purpose, and learning your limitations. But then that story in particular, it was like the congressperson. I mean, like everybody that got involved, you walked right in. I mean, it was that was a fun one. And I do believe in miracles, especially like that. I was like, oh, it's a page turner too. When you get there, you're like, oh my gosh, does he make it?
Yeah. It's really amazing. I like when the Grant was helping me edit the book, he read that one, of course, as well too. And he goes, you know, it's amazing because I knew the end of the story and I was still like in total suspense.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. It makes us better. Those types of things make us better. And I do appreciate your transparency in the book. And I think that other people that work with nonprofits, I've served on a board and stuff like that for other nonprofits. It's so important, I think, to see the transparency, and it makes the book real, because if everything was perfect and fluffy, you knew that was fake, especially if you've ever traveled to another country.
Yes.
So this is a big one for me. I would like to know this, as much as I think every reader. What is the bucket list of countries, places you'd like to go to with Be the Change? Because I'm usually a Marriott girl, not a Hut girl.
Yeah.
Where do you want to take Be the Change?
Well, if you'd ask my wife, it would be anywhere not hot and humid. So Christy is not a fan of that. And, you know, pretty much, of course, every place we go is that. And so I would say any of those places. Now, Nepal was pretty good for her. So, you know, that would be a good one. But anywhere in the more northern or southern, you know, non-hot and humid climates. But I have to go back to Pomoto and steal a concept or a principle from him, which is the story about that is, and then I'll share how it applies to this one. But the story about that is when he was living with us, we actually took him to Animal Kingdom one time. And it was amazing for him. And we walked out of one of the shows, and my sister Janet, we were just walking down to the next ride or event or whatever we were doing. And he was just blown away by this show. And my sister Janet said, Pomoto, what was the best part of the show for you? And he said, everything. And I just love that. And so we try and take that. So we say, in fact, his scholarship that's named after him is called the Everything is the Best Scholarship. And again, I think just that approach, right, to life and approach to your dreams, like we talked about, is what makes them happen. And so I'll say that about, you know, what would I, everything. I mean, I love them all. I want to go everywhere. I want to build schools everywhere that, you know, we can help people and have that experience and take people. So yeah, Christy, we'll get rid of the humid places for our bucket list, but for me, everywhere.
I'm with Christy. It doesn't help our hair. Human places. I tell Grant, I'm like, you know, buddy, roughing it for me is staying at the Holiday Inn with no hair dryer. So I don't know. He's like, someday.
Yeah, someday.
So what are 3 things you recommend readers who want to be the change? What are 3 things that you recommend to readers? And how do you get started? So if they've listened to this today and they say, okay, I'm bought in, I want to go, I want to be part of this change, what do they do?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I would say in concept, because, you know, whatever charity, wherever you're giving your time, talents, and treasures, I would just say, first and foremost, check it out. You know, it's cool because if you look at any statistic, Americans are the most generous people. They give the most in terms of all those things: time, talent, and treasure. And so that's great, but that also means that there's, you know, so many potential problems with that. So we really consider, and we, if you give to Be the Change, whether it's your time, talent, or treasure, all 3, we consider it an investment. And we think you should expect, and we should give you a return on your investment. Now, that doesn't mean money back in your pocket. What that means is stories and lives changed, and schools that you can see, you know, make a difference. It's bathrooms for girls in the developing world. It's bridges so people can get to school. It's teachers' houses so the campuses are safe and secure, and the teachers show up. You know, that's a difference in the developing world from us, is the teacher attendance is much more of a factor and actually a hurdle than student attendance in the developing world. You know, so we want that to be your return on investment. And I think whatever organization, charity, mission you're given to, you know, check that out. I mean, make sure you're okay with how much is going to on-ground missions, you know, versus administrative fees, awareness, advertising. All those things are important, but I think that has to resonate with you. And you have to be okay with how they're using your money to accomplish the mission. And then, of course, you have to be passionate about the mission. You know, for us, of course, that's empowering through education. It's opportunities. And we do say, you know, go. Now, a lot of people can't go. I mean, my mom was amazing. She has the best heart in the world. I would not be who I am without my mama. She's not going to go on to Be the Change bill, but she provides scholarships, you know, for people that can. And then what's cool is those people send her cards and pictures back about, like, listen, I was able to go because of you. You know, so either go yourself or go virtually. I mean, it's all virtual world right now. I mean, we've learned to become a virtual society. And so, you know, do that way. And again, whether that's Be the Change or whatever charity you're talking about, is find a way to go. I mean, be present, or have your, you know, your input in it be a present part of the mission, so that you can see it, because that's where you're gonna, 1, get the most impact, but 2, also make sure that it's not, you know, creating dependent. It's not toxic charity. It's not a problem or something that you don't believe in, that you're not passionate about. And then I think that the other cool thing is, you know, really think about how you can do the culturally appropriate part. So, you know, wherever that is and however you're doing it, I mean, make sure that the organization and or you are looking at that part and saying, you know, what is really going to advance this career. Again, in our world, that can be really funding, you know, tuition, or just like those first kids, books and tuition from the start. And don't forget about vocational training. You know, we think about higher education, and we think about, it'd be awesome to see somebody go to university, which is awesome. But at the same time, I mean, jobs are the only thing that move the poverty needle in a sustainable way. And so if we're helping create local, sustainable jobs that change a family, a community, a country, that's huge impact from there. And then I say, don't forget about the family and the community, right? Because like we talked about, it is such a community-based thing. And so a lot of times you actually have to do what I call indirect help. And that can mean, you know, helping the family business so that they then can get all the kids in school, okay? Because that's how it's gonna work, okay? If you give any support to a family in the developing world, it's gonna be prioritized, okay? First is survival. Can we eat, okay? You know, next is then maybe you know, I mean, for sure, shelter and all those essential life-giving things. But then the next thing maybe is, can the first kid go to school? And that's usually going to be the boy. Okay. So we got to keep supporting that. So the domino, because you can't just say, I want that girl to go to school. I want your third daughter to go to school. It won't work that way. And that's not culturally appropriate. But we can say, how can we get the family so that the whole family can go to school, you know, and do that. And so again, I think you got to think a little bit bigger, and get over your own, what you think is right, what you think is best in your American way, and say, how can we do this to help in their way that's going to really be sustainable?
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And I appreciate that so much. Just from our family has done a lot of traveling, and our family has worked in other countries, and being respectful of that and their communities, and that it's different and it's okay.
Yes.
It's okay that it's different. It's okay that they prioritize in that way.
Yes.
And for heaven's sakes, you know, feed, shelter, that thing, of course, comes food, shelter, that of course comes first. But I do respect that. Grant talks about that quite a bit when he talks about sustainability. And you and I talked a little bit about that when we first talked, that I thought he was a hippie digging wells. He's not a hippie digging wells. But he does dig some, but
he does dig wells.
But I appreciate that about the changers. So before we close up, is there anything else you want to share with us today about Be the Change, or about the mission of the organization, that just you want someone to walk away? If there was one thing they could walk away from this interview with, what is it?
I think it actually really springboards off what you just said, and what ended is, you know, just first of all, get outside of yourself. And understand that, you know, we can really learn so much from other people, even the least of these, even the beautiful poor. Again, I say I have 26 years of formal education, 2 doctoral degrees, and the best education I've ever gotten. The most life-changing things that have ever happened to me have been in the developing world, you know. And so I think just that is so important for us to understand, and to just broaden our perspectives and realize that, you know, at the end of the day, it really is one world. We really are interconnected across the world. I know sometimes it doesn't seem like that, and it doesn't feel like that's going to affect you, but it does. And I hope people understand that the pandemic shed some light on that, right? I mean, it really is. I mean, it really shows an interconnectivity that can affect us all, and that you can make a difference by simple ways. Don't get caught up in the, you know, I can't save everyone. I mean, that's so easy to do too, right? And I think really that's one of the main things we've learned about Be the Change is, you know, it only takes one. I mean, changing one life is important, and it does have an amazing ripple effect that then changes a family and a community in the world. And so, you know, just focus on that. What can I do? That it is impactful. And I think if you do that in the right way, whatever that is for you, if you do that in the right way, for whatever you use, and put your time and talent and treasure into that with some passion, you know, you will make a difference, even in your own life, and you will change lives, including your own.
Very good. So well said. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for all the work that you and Christy do for all of this, and look forward to hearing more about your adventures. And everybody needs to go out and get Hand Delivered Hope on Amazon, and go to the Be the Change website and to get more information.